The stench hit the ambassadors before they even entered the throne room. It was like something dead had been left to rot, then soaked in sewage. But no one had died. That was just how King James I of England smelled on a good day. This is the same man who commissioned the King James Bible, yet he hadn't bathed in years, drooled constantly thanks to an oversized tongue, and wore lice-infested clothes that looked like they were alive. And believe it or not, he was one of the more normal kings. Because when you hand someone absolute power, a golden throne, and a court full of yes-men, you don't get a wise ruler. You get a lunatic in a crown. We're talking kings who thought they were made of glass, queens who ate themselves into custom-shaped coffins, emperors who made their horses senators. And no, that last one isn't a metaphor for modern politics, though maybe it should be. Welcome to the freak show of history's most unhinged royals, where kings die laughing at dear jokes and your weirdest coworker suddenly seems pretty normal. Let's ease into the madness with someone who was, surprisingly, one of the more tamer cases, Charles VI of France. This king suffered from what's now known as glass delusions. He truly believed he was made of glass and might shatter if touched. Imagine it, the ruler of France, one of the most powerful men in medieval Europe, wandering around with iron rods sewn into his clothes to keep himself from breaking. He wouldn't let anyone touch him. He sat down slowly. Sometimes he forgot he was even king. Your Majesty, you have a council meeting. I do. What? Because you're the king. Oh, right. And here's the kicker. This wasn't even considered that strange at the time. Glass delusions were weirdly common among nobles. Scholars even had a name for it, scholar's melancholy. Apparently, in the Middle Ages, if you thought too much, your brain might just decide you were fragile crystal. Which, honestly, explains a lot about medieval leadership. Next up, Peter III of Russia, a man whose behavior was downright embarrassing. This grown emperor didn't just collect dolls, he played with them. Full voices, complex storylines, the whole deal. And he didn't do this in private. He forced his wife, yes, future Catherine the Great, and the entire court to join in until 2 or 3 in the morning. Imagine being Russia's most powerful woman and your husband is making you roleplay a toy cavalry charge at 2 a.m. No wonder she allegedly had him assassinated. Officially, he died of hemorrhoidal colic, which is a fancy way of saying his but pain killed him. But come on, daily doll play and then sudden extreme but death? That's not a coincidence. That's a motive. And Peter's weirdness didn't stop there. He was obsessed with Prussia, wore their uniforms, spoke German instead of Russian, and once held a full military trial for a rat. Why? It chewed through his toy soldiers. But he ended up pardoning it, for showing Prussian discipline. This is what unchecked power does to a person. Next up, King Farouk of Egypt, a man who took kleptomania to royal extremes. Despite his immense wealth, countless palaces, and over 1,000 tailored suits, Farouk had a strange hobby, pickpocketing. He literally trained himself in the art, calling it the hand of the thief. During meetings and state dinners, guests would leave missing wallets, jewelry, even medals. Winston Churchill once walked away from a meeting with Farouk only to realize his watch was gone. The king had swiped it. And that was just the beginning. Farouk was obsessed with the color red. He owned hundreds of red cars and banned anyone else in Egypt from having one. If he saw one, he'd have it confiscated or shot. He once blew out a car's tires just for passing his convoy. The driver? A diplomat. International crisis? Nope. Just another Tuesday for King Farouk. He also boasted the world's largest porn collection, 10,000 items, which he claimed were educational. Sure, Farouk. He was so overweight he needed reinforced furniture. At restaurants, staff had to remove chair arms so he could sit. Then he'd order the entire menu and still complain he was hungry. Next on our list died in a way so ridiculous it sounds like a Monty Python sketch. King Martin of Aragon, also called Martin the Humane, which is ironic because his death was anything but dignified, met his end in 1410 after eating an entire goose. Not a slice, not a leg, the whole goose. Trying to break the awkward silence that followed, his jester told a joke. The joke? A deer was hanging by its tail from a tree because it had been stealing figs. That's it. No punchline. Just a weird mental image. But Martin found it so funny, he started laughing uncontrollably. For 3 hours. He laughed until he couldn't breathe, turned purple, fell off his chair, and died. Imagine being the jester. Your job is to entertain the king, and you accidentally kill him with a half-baked joke about fruit-thieving wildlife. Do you put that on your resume? Successfully made monarch laugh to death. Next on the list is Christian VII of Denmark. Not evil, just completely unhinged. His daily life was basically a highlight reel of untreated mental illness. He masturbated so obsessively that doctors prescribed a custom chair to prevent injury. He'd randomly slap people, courtiers, foreign dignitaries, even guests at his own wedding. State dinner? Slap. Peace talks? Slap. And it gets weirder. Christian would sprint through the palace at night, smashing furniture and artwork. During formal dinners, he'd leap over tables for fun. At one point, he even named his dog a government minister. Not as a joke. He genuinely expected people to take orders from the dog. He also had a habit of playing leapfrog, not with kids and not in private, with foreign ambassadors during official state visits. Imagine being sent to negotiate a treaty and the king wants to hop over you in the throne room. Do you let him win? Is there a protocol for this? What's the polite diplomatic way to tell a monarch he's terrible at leapfrog? Emperor Caligula of Rome is possibly the gold standard for royal insanity. He didn't just have strange habits. He elevated weirdness into performance art. Let's start with his horse, Incitatus. This wasn't just a pampered pet. Caligula built it a marble stable, gave it an ivory manger, purple robes, an imperial color punishable by death if worn by commoners, jeweled collars, and its own servants. But it gets stranger. The horse was invited to formal dinners, not as entertainment, but as a guest, seated at the table, drinking from golden goblets, while Caligula held full political discussions with it. He even planned to make Incitatus a consul of Rome. Caligula also declared himself a god, nothing unusual for a Roman emperor, but he took it further. He dressed up as different gods and goddesses and demanded unique worship for each persona. One day he was Jupiter, the next Venus, then maybe Neptune. He had temples, priests, and sacrifices dedicated to himself. Oh, and the time he built a floating bridge across the Bay of Naples, 3 miles long, just so he could ride his horse across it wearing the stolen breastplate of Alexander the Great. Why? A soothsayer once told him he had as much chance of becoming emperor as riding a horse across that bay. Caligula took it personally. King Ludwig II of Bavaria, also known as the Swan King or Mad King Ludwig, had an obsession that makes modern Disney adults look subtle. He was completely consumed by medieval fairy tales and Wagner's operas, so much so that he built multiple fantasy castles, including Neuschwanstein, the one that inspired Disney's Cinderella Castle. But Ludwig didn't just build fairy tale castles. He lived in them like the star of his own myth. He'd dress in full medieval garb and required his servants to do the same. He even constructed an artificial cave, complete with a waterfall and colored lighting, where he'd float around in a shell-shaped boat dressed as Lohengrin, the Swan Knight. At night, he'd ride through the grounds in a royal sleigh, even in summer, using wheels instead of runners, while wearing full Louis XIV-style costumes. Ludwig was also a voluntary night owl. He slept during the day and held his morning rides at midnight, with dinners served at dawn. His staff had to follow his nocturnal schedule, creating a bizarre reverse court that lived in darkness. He once had a servant's teeth removed because their clicking dentures ruined the atmosphere of his fantasy world. But his strangest habit? Imaginary dinner parties. He'd host formal banquets for long-dead royals like Louis XIV and Marie Antoinette, complete with full-place settings. Ludwig would toast to their health and discuss politics with empty chairs while servants were expected to pour wine, serve food, and clear untouched plates, all without cracking a smile. Imagine trying to keep a straight face as your king earnestly debates the Franco-Prussian War with a ghost.